I spent 8 years building the one thing that made me feel safe. My house, my own place that I could call home. But my sister always has been the golden child, and when she got married, my parents insisted of giving her my house because newlyweds need space. So I smiled, said I'd think about it, and drew up an agreement so airtight that watching them try to live under its weight was the best revenge I never had to speak aloud. It was Friday. I was sipping lukewarm coffee out of a chipped mug. That's when my mother cleared her throat. "Eloise, sweetheart," she said, smiling too brightly. "Claire and Evan have decided they want to stay in town. Close to family, you know." I nodded politely, waiting for the point. "Well," she placed her hand delicately over mine, like she was about to offer condolences. "Your house would be perfect for newlyweds, don't you think?" I blinked. "I'm sorry. What?" "Just think about it," she went on, already steamrolling ahead. "You have that beautiful 2-bedroom craftsman with the wraparound porch and the little garden you take such good care of. It's ideal for starting a family." My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Then my father chimed in, like it was just a matter of business. "It's time to do something for the family, Eloise. Claire's starting her life. You've had your time." "My time?" "Dad, I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. I looked at Claire, who didn't say a word. Her lips were curved into a demure smile, but she didn't meet my eyes. Not once. That house wasn't just a house. It was the first thing I ever truly owned. I worked 2 jobs for 8 years, while putting myself through night school. I skipped vacations, sold the car I loved, and lived off canned soup long enough to develop a permanent distaste for anything that rhymes with noodle. When I signed that final mortgage check, I didn't cry. But I did sit in the middle of my living room floor and breathe for the first time in a decade. And now, they were asking me to give it up like it was a used jacket? For Claire. Of course, it was for Claire. "I know this is a lot to take in," Mom said gently, patting my hand again like I was a skittish animal. "But we just thought, what a beautiful wedding gift that would be." From one sister to another. There it was. A gift. They wanted me to gift my home. The one I bled for. To Claire, who once crashed my car in college and cried so hard, I ended up apologizing to her. The air shifted. I felt like I'd stepped into someone else's dream, one of those twisted kinds where everyone you love turns to mannequins and you're the only one who notices. Claire finally spoke. "Only if you want to, of course," she said with a light laugh that didn't match the hunger in her eyes. "I mean, it's your house. We would never ask if it didn't make sense." But it didn't make sense. Not unless you believed your eldest daughter was an emotional ATM with no withdrawal limits. I stood up slowly, still holding the chipped mug. "You know what?" I said, and the table went still. "Let me think it over." The silence was sharp. Mom's smile faltered, just slightly. "Of course, sweetheart, no pressure." But there was pressure. The kind that coils around your ribs and squeezes when no one's looking. I turned and walked toward the garden gate, every footstep deliberate on the slate stone path. The hydrangeas swayed in the breeze, oblivious to the fact that the people who raised me just tried to barter away my soul with a side of ham and potato salad. The moment I reached the end of the path, I exhaled. Not in defeat. In strategy. They thought I'd cave. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I didn't drive straight home after brunch. Instead, I pulled into the overlook just past Dawson Hill, the place I used to go in college when I needed to remind myself why I was doing all this. The hill where I sat in my 10-year-old Camry eating peanut butter crackers for dinner and reading mortgage blogs like they were romance novels. Back when the dream was just a blueprint and nobody believed in it but me. I parked, turned off the engine, and just sat. Birds chirped. A couple laughed somewhere behind me. My phone buzzed twice. I didn't look. I didn't need to. I already knew what the text would say. "Eloise, we didn't mean to ambush you. Please don't make this about pride." Pride? Is that what they called it now? When a woman refuses to be quietly erased? I eventually went home, still not saying a word. As I walked into my house, I let the door close behind me with a solid, satisfying click. I stood in the entryway, taking in every inch of it. The crown molding I restored by hand. The built-in bookshelf I saved up for 6 months to install. The window seat where I drank countless cups of tea while planning this life. I took off my shoes and walked barefoot to my study. It used to be the spare room. I turned it into something sacred, where I keep a corkboard full of goals and a drawer of old pay stubs I've never been able to throw away. Proof. Proof that I did this. That I climbed out of debt, out of insecurity, out of a family that only valued me when I was useful. I pulled out the thick folder labeled Home Mortgage Docs. Everything was there. My closing paperwork, the title in my name, the final letter from the bank congratulating me on the last payment, and just like that, my spine straightened. I opened my laptop, pulled up a blank document, and started typing. Conditional real property transfer. Draft agreement prepared by Eloise Harper Quinn. This agreement is to define the conditions under which Eloise Quinn is willing to consider the conditional transfer of ownership for the property located at 228 Birch Run Avenue to Claire Elise Quinn and Evan Thomas Caldwell. I didn't stop typing for an hour. By the time I was done, the document was 8 pages long, clear, cold, legally sound. The gist? They could have the house if they agreed to shoulder every single responsibility I had carried for over a decade. The taxes, the maintenance, the storm drain repairs, the termite inspections, the HOA bylaws, the clause that if they missed one payment, the deed reverted to me automatically. Oh, and they couldn't sell it. Not now. Not ever. And just for good measure, I included a final line. Recipient acknowledges that failure to meet these responsibilities will be considered a voluntary forfeiture of the property, with no refund or appeal. My hands didn't tremble as I printed the document. I felt, still, like the eye of a hurricane, because I finally understood something. They weren't asking for generosity. They were asking for surrender. And I was done handing out pieces of myself like party favors. I signed the bottom in blue ink, folded the pages into an envelope, wrote "Proposal for Review" on the front. Then I poured myself a glass of wine, leaned back in my desk chair, and stared out the window as the sun dropped below the horizon. Tomorrow, I would send the message. But tonight I let myself feel it. Not anger, not sadness, just a new kind of clarity. The next morning, I woke before my alarm. There's a certain kind of wake-up that doesn't feel like rest. It feels like your body already knows there's something important to do. I didn't make coffee. Didn't bother with my usual playlist or the news. I printed one more copy of the agreement, sealed it, and slid it into my work bag between my laptop and planner. Then I walked into my kitchen and called my parents. Mom picked up on the second ring, her voice already in performance mode. "Eloise, sweetheart, how are you feeling this morning? I know yesterday caught you off guard." I could practically hear her rearranging the story in her head. Like maybe if she softened her tone enough, I'd forget she asked me to hand over my house like it was a pair of shoes I outgrew. "I've thought it over," I said evenly. A pause. I imagined her sitting straighter in that high-back dining chair she refused to replace, eyes narrowing with interest. "You have?" "I have," I confirmed, reaching for the legal folder. "And I'm willing to transfer the house to Claire and Evan. On one condition." "Well," she laughed lightly. "Of course we'd cover closing costs and all of that. That's not an issue." "No," I cut in, polite but firm. "Not just closing costs." I heard her inhale, sharp and subtle. The same breath she used to take before arguing with my teachers growing up. "Eloise, don't make this more complicated than it needs to be." "I'm not. I've made it very simple." And with that, I opened the envelope, pulled out the contract, and read the first page out loud. Clear, steady, unapologetic. She stayed quiet through most of it, until I reached the part about the $6,000 annual property taxes and the automatic reversion clause. "That seems harsh," she finally said. "Is that necessary?" "If it's truly for the good of the family," I replied, "then the family can handle responsibility." Another pause. Then my father's voice came through the speaker. He must have been listening in the whole time. "I think you're trying to make a point," he said. His tone was that familiar mix of disappointment and control. "And this isn't the time for pride. Claire is starting a new life. You're already established." Established. Like I'd arrived at some arbitrary checkpoint, and now it was my job to toss the rope back down, without asking where it would land. "I'm making an offer," I said coolly. "Not a point. I've already emailed the document to the family group chat. Claire and Evan can review it at their convenience. Mom tried to change tactics. But if we accept, it sounds like you'll be waiting for them to fail. That's not family, Eloise. No, I said. That's a contract. Something that's respected when emotions fail. Silence stretched long and taut. Then Dad exhaled. We'll talk to Claire. You do that, I said. Have a good morning. I hung up, my hand steady even as my heart pounded. Not from fear, but from release. For once, I wasn't their quiet daughter. I was the woman who built something they never truly saw. Until now. I checked the group chat one last time before heading out for the day. The document was sitting there, unopened. But it would be read. Because when people think they've won by cornering you, the last thing they expect is for you to redesign the walls around them. The legal draft sat in the family group chat like a live wire. For hours. Nothing. No responses. Just silence, which in our family was its own form of escalation. I knew my parents were regrouping. Probably gathering around the kitchen island with coffee and furrowed brows, whispering in that tone they used when talking about what to do about Eloise. By the time I got home that evening, there it was. A ping from my sister Claire. Hey, just saw the agreement. Can we maybe talk before jumping into legal stuff? It's a lot. I didn't respond right away. I let it breathe. She was testing the waters, waiting to see if I'd crack, backpedal, or offer a softened version. Instead, I opened my laptop and clicked Read Receipt. A few minutes later, another message came through, this time from Mom. We reviewed your proposal. Some of the terms seem excessive. The spirit of this gift should be love, not punishment. I actually laughed out loud at that one. Because the irony of being guilted over the terms of giving away my house, the home I built with every spare cent I had, was rich. But still, I waited. At 8:15 p.m., Dad replied to the group. We'll agree to your terms, if that's what it takes. Claire and Evan are responsible adults. They can handle it. And just like that, they thought it was settled. I could almost feel their relief through the screen. They believed I'd made my petty point, that my conditions were symbolic, an emotional protest wrapped in paperwork. They didn't know I drafted it with a real estate attorney, or that it would be filed and enforceable within 72 hours of their signature. So I replied, cordial as ever. Excellent. I'll send the final version through DocuSign tomorrow morning. Let me know if you'd like a lawyer to review it before signing. That last part, pure theater, because I already knew they wouldn't. The next day, Claire and Evan signed. Quick, almost eagerly. I imagine Claire did it from the couch, glass of wine in one hand, brushing it off like one of the dozens of wedding contracts she'd reviewed in the past few weeks. Cake, venue, band house, they had no idea what they'd agreed to. Later that evening, my father printed the agreement and read it aloud, according to my cousin Lena, who heard it all during a casual drop-by visit and called me right after. They seriously thought you were bluffing, she whispered, barely containing her amusement. Your dad read the part about the taxes, and Claire actually said, wait, how much is that per month? And then Evan, get this, he said, oh, I thought taxes were included in the mortgage. I pinched the bridge of my nose and exhaled through a laugh. Of course he did. And then, Lena went on, your mom said, well, maybe Eloise can cover the first year, just until they get settled. I burst out laughing. I couldn't help it. Did you tell them no? I asked. Lena snorted. Please. I told them if they couldn't handle the taxes, they'd lose the house by Clause 6. Exactly. Because this wasn't about a gift anymore. It was about the weight of responsibility, the same weight I carried for years, while they watched from the sidelines, offering praise only when it was convenient. They wanted the keys without the upkeep, the ribbon without the wrapping. But homes aren't symbolic. They're sweat, they're sleepless nights and emergency plumber calls, and 10,000 unglamorous moments nobody ever sees. And now, for the first time, they were about to feel all of it. I sat back in my desk chair that night, sipping tea, listening to the hum of the old radiator I'd paid to restore last winter. Let them try to own what they never helped build. Let them try. By the end of the week, the mood in the family group chat had turned subdued. Gone were the exclamation points and wedding countdowns. No more pictures of Claire touring florists, or Evan showing off his grill master skills. Just a steady silence punctuated by a single text from Dad that said, we need to discuss lawn care options. That one made me laugh. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the message to my lawyer. just to have it on file. The weekend came and went. I spent it tending my vegetable garden, snipping back the rosemary and thinning the kale. I never had time to cook but always liked seeing grow. Meanwhile, Claire and Evan had their first official visit to their new house, under the watchful eye of responsibility. Lena filled me in, of course. They didn't even know where the main water shutoff valve was, she said, cackling over the phone. And Evan's already talking about hiring a property manager. Oh, so they want the house and a staff? I said, raising an eyebrow as I repotted my aloe plant. Sounds about right. By Tuesday, the first real crack appeared. A new message popped into the family thread. From Claire this time. Quick question. Who do you use for gutter maintenance? Also, is it really necessary to clean them every season? The subtext was so thick you could mop it off the floor. My response? Yes, it is. No emoji. No explanation. Just the quiet satisfaction of watching someone step into the very life they once tried to take as a shortcut. Then came the second message. This time more urgent. Hey, we got the property tax notice. Didn't realize it would hit this fast. Can we adjust the agreement to start payments in the new year? I stared at it for a full minute. Let the ridiculousness marinate. They'd signed a legally binding contract. They thought it was flexible. So I replied with all the warmth of a seasoned paralegal. Per Clause 3.2, financial responsibilities begin upon transfer of occupancy. Payment schedule was included in the appendix. Let me know if you need a refresher. Dad chimed in, trying to play peacekeeper. Let's all keep a level head. These things can be worked out. But I didn't respond. Because this wasn't a conversation. It was a transaction. They had no idea how hard it was to be me for a decade. To do everything right, and still be the afterthought. They thought I'd bend, because I always had. But this time, I was steel. Later that week, the text I was waiting for finally arrived, delivered at 6:42 p.m. on a Thursday, when they must have been sitting at the kitchen table staring down their bank statement. Eloise, we need to talk. Oh yes, yes you do, and I would be there, waiting, smile steady, contract in hand, ready to let the weight of their own choices teach them what I never could with words. They asked me to meet on a Thursday evening, just after dinner. Neutral ground, they said, so we chose my parents' back porch, the same place they used to host summer barbecues when I was little, the scent of citronella candles and charred hot dogs filling the air. But this time, it wasn't hot dogs on the menu. It was accountability. I arrived right on time. Claire and Evan were already there, seated side by side on the white wicker love seat. They didn't look newly engaged. They looked tired. Evan's collar was wrinkled. Claire's lip gloss had faded. Their energy reminded me of toddlers after too much cake. My parents stood nearby, watching me like I might spook and bolt. I didn't. I took the patio chair directly across from them and folded my hands in my lap. Silent. Waiting. Claire cleared her throat. So, we've been talking. I nodded. Yes? Her voice was soft. Meek even. We didn't realize how involved all of this would be. The maintenance, the taxes, the homeowners association requirements. We've barely had time to plan the wedding, let alone figure out HVAC tune-ups and sewer line inspections. Evan jumped in. And the insurance premiums. They're high. Welcome to homeownership, I said, voice even. Anything specific you want to discuss? They hesitated. I watched the dance in real time. Claire looking to Evan, Evan looking to my parents pretending not to look at anyone at all. We just think, Claire said carefully. Maybe we move too fast. Maybe this house is more than we're ready for right now. Emotionally. Financially. Ah, I said, not smiling. So, you'd like to break the agreement? Evan cleared his throat. Well, maybe revise it, so we ease into things. Like deferring taxes for the first year. No. Just one word. Calm. Direct. Like I was closing a window during a storm. My mother stepped forward, voice laced with fragile warmth. Eloise, they're doing their best. Surely you can make some allowances. We're family. And there it was, that word again. Family. The tool they always used to bend me, stretch me, strip me. I looked straight at Claire. You asked for what I built, I said quietly. And I gave you the chance to earn it the way I did, through work, through ownership, through care. You thought it was a shortcut. It wasn't. Claire's lower lip trembled, but she didn't speak. Do you want to keep the house? I asked. She hesitated too long. No, I said for her. You don't. You wanted the version of the house that lived in Mom's photo albums and Dad's speeches. Not the real thing. Not the leaks in the roof, and the frozen pipes in February, and the lawn that turns yellow if you miss a single watering day. We didn't mean to take advantage of you, she said softly. But you did, I replied. Evan looked at me, defeat settling into his features. So, what happens now? The house reverts to me, per clause 4.1, I said. You'll sign the revocation form by Monday. I'll cover the filing fee, and we'll consider the matter closed. My father rubbed his temple, clearly uncomfortable. But the lesson was already settling into the space like dusk. I stood up, my chair scraping softly against the stone patio. I didn't do this to be cruel, I said, looking around the circle. I did it so you'd learn what it actually costs to build something that lasts. And then I walked away. Not storming, not dramatic, just done. The next morning, I drove out to see the one person I knew wouldn't need an explanation. Gran May. She lived in a quiet assisted living center just off Willow Creek Road, where the birdsong was constant, and the smell of magnolia trees curled through the windows like perfume from another life. She was already outside in a sweater 2 sizes too big, a blanket draped over her lap, tea in hand. Her hair was white and soft as cotton, tied back in a loose braid like she used to wear when she canned peaches in her kitchen with the windows wide open. When she saw me walking up the path, she smiled like she'd been waiting all morning. There she is, she said. My girl with the steel spine. I laughed and leaned down to hug her, burying my face in the faint scent of lavender lotion and peppermint candies. I brought cinnamon rolls, I murmured, holding up the little brown bag. Good, she said. Nothing that hard ever tasted sweet without sugar on top. I sat beside her, our knees touching, the quiet wrapping around us like a blanket. I didn't launch into the story right away. I didn't have to. Gran May already knew the flavor of this kind of betrayal. Finally, I said it out loud. They tried to take the house, Gran. She didn't flinch. Of course they did. They said I'd had my time, that I should give it to Claire, as a wedding present. Gran May sipped her tea. That house has your blood in its bricks. You think I don't remember the nights you worked that second job? The birthday you skipped, because you needed a new furnace. The way you used to stop by my place just to cry in the laundry room, thinking I didn't hear you? My eyes prickled. I hadn't cried once during all of this. Not during the offer. Not during the contract. Not when Claire said she didn't realize taxes were that high. But now? Sitting next to the woman who taught me what resilience smelled like, lemons and sweat and old hymnals, I finally let my shoulders shake. I thought maybe I was being cruel, I whispered, setting those terms, watching them struggle. She turned to me, eyes clear as ever. No, baby, you were being fair. What they wanted was a shortcut. What you gave them was a choice. They couldn't carry what you did, and that's not your shame, that's theirs. I looked down at the weathered lines on her hand, the way her fingers curled slightly from arthritis, but never lost their strength. I just wanted them to understand what it cost me, I said. They don't need to understand it, she replied softly. They need to respect it. And honey, now they do. We sat in silence for a while longer, sipping tea, watching 2 cardinals dart between branches like they were laughing at the whole world. Before I left, Gran May squeezed my hand and said, They forgot who raised you, but you remembered. I drove home with the windows down and the contract folder tucked safely back into my bag. I wasn't alone. I came from strength, and I'd just reclaimed mine. When I got home from Gran May's, the house felt different, lighter. Not because anything had changed inside, but because I had. There was a stillness in me now, the kind that comes after a long storm, when you realize you didn't break. You held. I dropped my bag by the entryway, kicked off my shoes, and walked barefoot across the cool hardwood floors. The sun was starting to set, casting long, golden shadows through the front windows. It touched the bookshelf I'd built with my own hands, the scuff marks in the hallway from when I tried to carry in a mattress by myself, the little paint drip near the ceiling I never fixed because, well, I liked the reminder. This place wasn't just 4 walls and a roof. It was a monument to grit, to sleepless nights, to silent sacrifices no one ever saw. And now, it was time to make something very clear. I sat at my dining table, opened my laptop, and typed out one final message to the family group chat. From Eloise, subject. Home. Hi all, this will be my last message on the matter. As of today, the house is legally back in my name. All paperwork has been filed. Claire and Evan are released from all obligations, and no further transfers will be entertained. Let me be clear, I didn't draft that agreement to embarrass anyone. I drafted it to mirror reality, the one I've lived every day for over a decade, the one you never noticed, because you didn't have to. I built this alone. I paid for it alone. I kept the heat on, the gutters clear, the foundation steady, alone. And I will not lose it to people who only remember me when they need something. I love this family, but love without respect is manipulation. Going forward, please do not ask me to surrender what I've earned in the name of doing something for the family. I've done plenty. It's someone else's turn now. Eloise, I hit send, closed the laptop, and exhaled. There were no dramatic pauses, no music swelling in the background. Just the slow, satisfying hush of a line being drawn in permanent ink. Not a threat, not a plea, a boundary. And for the first time in my life, I knew no one in that group had the nerve or the leverage to cross it. I walked out to the porch with a cup of tea, my favorite mug in hand, and watched the sun finish dipping below the trees. The air smelled like summer coming. No one texted back that night. Not Mom, not Dad, not Claire. It was blissful. Because silence, when you've finally spoken your truth, that's peace. Thanksgiving came fast that year. Too fast, if you asked Claire. By then, the tension in the family had settled into a strange, scratchy quiet, like an ill-fitting sweater nobody wanted to take off in front of company. The house debacle wasn't spoken about anymore, but it lingered. You could feel it in the way my mother said my name, just a half beat too carefully, or how Claire smiled without showing her teeth. We still had dinner together. It was tradition. And my parents were too proud to cancel it, even if the guest list now included the emotional equivalent of landmines. I showed up on time. Not early, not late. Just punctual enough to be respectful, but not eager. When I walked through the door, my mother barely looked up from the mashed potatoes. Eloise, she said, as if she'd just remembered I was part of the family. Glad you could make it. I smiled politely. Wouldn't miss it. Claire was already at the table, picking at the cranberry sauce with the kind of focus you save for cutting wires on a bomb. Evan sat beside her, suddenly fascinated by the butter dish. The table was quieter than usual. Even the kids, my cousin's twins, weren't shrieking like they normally did. It was as if everyone had agreed, silently and collectively, not to mention anything that might provoke a reaction, which meant no one said the word house. We passed dishes. We poured wine. We pretended. Until dessert, Claire waited until everyone had a slice of pie. Her fork hovered midair, and her voice was soft enough to be mistaken for vulnerability. Eloise, she said, not meeting my eyes, I just want to say, I'm sorry. The entire table froze like someone had hit a mute button. I blinked, slowly. Sorry for what? She looked down, cheeks flushed pink. For making it seem like what you built could just be handed over. I didn't understand what it meant to own something like that, to earn it. My father shifted in his chair. My mother set down her glass. Evan cleared his throat but said nothing. I stared at Claire, my once golden sister who had finally tasted the real flavor of adulthood, consequence. I gave her a single nod. Thank you. And that was it. I didn't add forgiveness or let her off the hook with some trite line about families sticking together. I didn't joke to break the tension or pretend like it had all been a misunderstanding. Because it hadn't been. It had been a betrayal. One wrapped in ribbons and served with sweet potato casserole. But at least now, she knew the cost of trying to claim someone else's victory. And I knew I'd never hand mine over again. After dinner, I helped clear the plates without being asked, then slipped out before the leftovers were boxed. No hugs, no small talk, just quiet authority. Sometimes, the best seat at the table isn't the one you're given. It's the one you choose to walk away from, with your dignity intact. The evening after Thanksgiving, I lit a candle in the living room and curled up on the sofa with a blanket and a novel I'd been trying to finish for weeks. But I didn't read. I just sat there, listening to the hush of my own home. My home. It hit different now, not because it looked any better. It didn't. The bathroom tiles still needed regrouting, and the floor creaked in the hallway if you stepped too far left, but because I'd protected it. And in doing so, I'd protected something bigger than a deed. I'd protected myself. There was no victory parade, no big dramatic confrontation that ended in applause. Just a slow, deliberate return to myself. Like finally slipping into your own skin after years of wearing someone else's idea of who you should be. The phone buzzed once. A message from Dad. Your mother says dinner was awkward, but I think you did the right thing. We didn't see it clearly. We do now. I stared at the message. No anger. No tears. Just wait. Lifting. Because I didn't need their validation anymore. But I wouldn't lie. It meant something to hear it. I typed back a simple reply. Thanks, Dad. Then I silenced my phone, turned it over, and pulled the blanket higher up my chest. Out the window, the porch light glowed warm against the night, illuminating the yard I'd planted myself, season by season. The hydrangeas were bare now, winter on its way, but they'd bloom again. They always did. A soft knock on the door startled me. I stood, pulled back the curtain, only to find a small box sitting on the porch. No one in sight. I opened it slowly. Inside was a card. For everything you've built and everything you've withstood. N.J. Gran May. My eyes stung. Beneath the card was a silver keychain, engraved with 3 simple words. Hold your ground. And I had. Every moment of doubt, every push to just be a team player, every gentle manipulation dressed up as love. I'd held my ground. Not to be cruel, not to prove a point, but because sometimes the kindest thing you can do, for others and for yourself, is not give them what they think they want, but show them what they need to learn. I sat back on the couch and finally opened my book, and this time, I read the first page without once thinking about what I owed anyone else. I could end this story by saying, everything went back to normal, but that wouldn't be true. Because when you finally stop letting people write your story for you, when you pick up the pen and draw a hard line between who you've been and who you'll never be again, nothing goes back. It moves forward. The truth is, things stayed quiet for a while after Thanksgiving. Claire didn't call. Evan certainly didn't. My parents kept to polite, surface-level texts. Hope you're staying warm. Or, the weather's wild this week, huh? Nothing about the house. Nothing about what they tried to take. They were too careful now, and I was too content to correct them. One Saturday in December, I got a handwritten card from Claire in the mail. No envelope, just folded like a note passed under a desk in middle school. Inside was one sentence. I see it now. I really do. I didn't need anything more. She'd never have to say it out loud, but I knew what she'd seen. The invisible weight I'd carried, that they all mistook for ease. The hours, the cost, the silence, the kind of strength that doesn't make a sound, but stays when everyone else gets to leave. I tucked the card in the drawer where I keep my house papers, not because I forgave her right then and there, but because some truths deserve to be kept close, quiet, unshakable. Around Christmas, I hosted a small gathering of friends, just a few women I'd grown close to over the years, co-workers, old neighbors, the woman from the coffee shop who always asked about my hydrangeas. They walked through the door with wine, cookies, laughter, and not a single request attached to my walls. As we toasted under soft string lights, someone asked if I'd ever considered selling the house. I smiled and shook my head. It's not for sale. Not in the real world. Not in mine. They nodded. They understood. This home, these rooms, these scuffed floors, the cracked baseboard in the hallway I still hadn't fixed. It was mine. In name, in spirit, in sweat. And no one would ever question that again. So no, this story doesn't end with a reunion, a redemption arc, or a dramatic apology dinner. It ends like this. A woman sitting in her own home, a keychain in her palm, 3 words engraved in metal and memory. Hold your ground. And I did. Not because I wanted to prove them wrong, but because I finally knew I was right.